North Atlantic, midnight. A storm tears across the Black Sea. The sky split open by lightning. Waves slam against steel as U-Boat U-552, known among Allied convoys as the Red Devil, claws through the chaos. Inside the dim red glow of the control room, sailors hunch over sonar consoles, headphones pressed tight, sweat glinting on their faces. The hum of the diesel engines fades, replaced by silence. Contact, bearing 215. Range 800 meters, the sonar man whispers. A heartbeat passes. Then another. The captain leans forward. Mark the target. The ping returns. Clear, sharp, echoing through the steel hull like a pulse. But something's wrong. The pattern isn't normal. The rhythm, unnatural. The sonar operator's eyes widen. Herr Kapitän. It's pinging back. For a long moment, no one breathes. Lightning flashes, revealing faces pale as ghosts. The Atlantic roars. The captain whispers, "What the hell are we hunting?" The next ping is louder. And this time, it's closer. The North Atlantic in 1943 was a graveyard of steel. Beneath its endless gray surface lay hundreds of wrecks. Oil slicks, twisted hulls, lifeless men still gripping the rails of ships that would never see land again. The Battle of the Atlantic had entered its deadliest phase. Convoys from Halifax and Liverpool steamed across the ocean under constant threat from Germany's underwater predators. The U-boats of Admiral Karl Donitz's Wolfsrudel, the Wolfpacks. Wolfpack 5, operating from the French base at Lorient, was among the most feared. Its commander, Captain Lieutenant Erich Topp, had already sunk more than 200,000 tons of Allied shipping. His submarine, U-552, bore the Red Devil emblem on its conning tower, a mark that haunted the nightmares of every merchant sailor who heard it whispered on the Atlantic wind. But in the spring of '43, the hunters were becoming the hunted. Allied radar had grown sharper, air patrols more relentless, and new technologies like HFDF direction finding and airborne depth charges turned the open ocean into a killing ground. Still, Wolfpack 5 sailed. Pride, doctrine, and desperation drove them onward. The Reich demanded results. On March 9, 1943, U-552 slipped silently from Lorient Harbor under a moonless sky. Her crew, 49 men, carried enough supplies for 6 weeks at sea. Their orders? Intercept convoy HX-229 en route from New York to Liverpool. They weren't alone. 7 other U-boats formed the Wolfpack, spread in a line stretching 300 kilometers across the ocean, waiting for the scent of engines and oil. Inside the U-boat, life was claustrophobic hell. The air was thick with diesel fumes and sweat. The temperature never dropped below 30 degrees. And every sound, every creak of metal, every hiss of the ballast tanks was amplified in the close quarters. Sonar technician Hans Bauer, only 19, sat hunched at his station, eyes locked on the glowing green scope. He'd been trained to recognize the signature of every Allied ship: destroyers, corvettes, tankers, troop transports. But what he heard that night didn't match anything in the manual. At 2300 hours, as U-552 cruised submerged beneath heavy seas, Bauer reported a faint signal on the hydrophone. It wasn't the steady thrum of propellers. It was irregular, almost mechanical, but wrong. A distorted heartbeat in the deep range, the captain asked. 700 meters and closing, Topp ordered silent running. Engines cut. The U-boat glided into darkness, its heartbeat now the creak of pressure and the faint drip of condensation. Then came the first ping, a sharp metallic note that made every man freeze. Bauer turned pale. "Sir, that's active sonar." "But," he swallowed, "it's not Allied frequency." Topp frowned. "Meaning?" Bauer hesitated. "Meaning? It's German." A silence fell that no one could break. Somewhere out in the black water, a sonar signal built by German engineers was echoing back at them. But there were no friendly submarines in the sector. None. At first, they thought it was an error. Sonar ghosts were common in heavy seas. The ocean was alive with false echoes, whales, wreckage, shifting thermals. But as the minutes passed, the pattern repeated. Ping, pause, ping, and each returned stronger than the last. U-552 descended deeper, 80 meters, 100 meters, 120. The pressure creaked through the hull. Still the pings followed, matching their depth changes perfectly. "Shadow astern," the navigator hissed. bearing 180, distance closing. The captain ordered the periscope raised. Through the distorted lens, lightning revealed only waves and rain. No enemy, no ship, nothing but the chaos of the Atlantic. Then, out of the darkness, came the faint outline of something, a black mass low to the water, moving impossibly fast against the current. The captain lowered the scope, his voice barely audible. "It's hunting us." For the next 2 hours, 52 fled through the deep, diving, turning, shutting down engines, drifting silent. But the echo remained, pursuing them through the dark like a heartbeat that would not die. By dawn, it was gone. When the crew surfaced near 600, the storm had passed. The ocean lay flat and endless under gray skies. But the faces inside U-552 were changed. Bauer refused to leave his post. His hands trembled as he adjusted the dials. "I know what I heard," he whispered. It wasn't a ship. It was something else. Top dismissed it as sonar interference, perhaps a reflection from their own signal bouncing through an odd layer of thermocline. Yet something in his voice betrayed unease. He ordered a return to the patrol route, but the crew whispered among themselves. Some said they had heard the echo before, a ghost signal that haunted the Atlantic, the sound of U-boats that had never come home. Within days, they would discover that Wolfpack 5 was no longer alone in the deep. For the next 72 hours, U-552 and the other submarines of Wolfpack 5 hunted across the northern Atlantic corridor, where convoys crept eastward under the constant menace of the deep. Their orders were precise: converge on grid square AE-87, intercept the merchant ships, and attack under cover of darkness. Yet among the men of the Red Devil, a quiet dread had settled in. The memory of that impossible ping still thrummed in their heads. The sea, usually their ally, had turned traitor. Every creak of the hull sounded like pursuit. Every bubble of ballast air hissed like breath on the neck. Even the diesel engines seemed to whisper doubts through the hull plates. Bauer, the young sonar man, refused to sleep. He sat before his headphones with a notebook in his lap, scribbling patterns and intervals. Convinced the sound had a logic, a call and response, like a conversation across the abyss. When the boat surfaced on the night of March 12th to recharge batteries, cold wind lashed across the deck. The moon glimmered on the wet steel as the men dragged themselves from the hatch for a breath of air. They smoked in silence, their cigarettes glowing like fireflies in the dark. The ocean was glass smooth now, the kind of eerie calm sailors feared most. Then Bauer climbed up, clutching his notebook. "Herr Kapitän," he said, voice shaking, "it's not random. The pings form a code." Top frowned. "Nonsense. There's no transmitter capable of that at this range." "But listen," Bauer insisted. "It answers every time we change depth. It mimics us." The captain dismissed him with a weary gesture, but the unease clung to the men like oil. Even the cook crossed himself before serving the next meal. Superstition had no place on a U-boat, yet down here, crushed between iron and pressure, faith was all that kept sanity intact. By dawn, they made contact with U-441, another boat in the Wolfpack. Over encrypted radio, her commander reported strange interference on sonar. "Phantom returns," he called them. A ship that isn't there. The message cut abruptly mid-sentence, replaced by static. Hours later, nothing more was heard from U-441. Top stared at the chart table, jaw tight. "We continue to intercept HX-229, he ordered, though his voice carried no conviction. The men obeyed. Discipline was their last defense. On March 13th at 0100 hours, the convoy finally appeared, dozens of freighters plowing east under escort. U-552 slid beneath them like a shadow. Through the periscope, Top saw the silhouettes of tankers gliding in and out of fog. "Prepare torpedoes 1 and 2, he whispered. The crew worked in silence, practiced movements honed by endless repetition. Bauer called ranges. Target bearing 075. Distance 1,500 meters, the captain murmured "Los," and 2 silver fish streaked into the black. Seconds later, thunder rolled through the deep. Flames leapt skyward. A freighter split apart, its stern vanishing beneath the waves. Cheers erupted through the boat, but the celebration froze when Bauer's face went white. "There it is again," he whispered. The sonar crackled. Ping. Pause. Ping, exactly the same as before, only now it came from the direction of the sinking ship. Louder, closer. Within minutes, the contact multiplied. 2, 3, 4 echoes encircling them like a tightening noose. "They're triangulating us," shouted the navigator. "Destroyers." Top shouted for a crash dive. The boat plunged, gauges spinning, lights flickering. Depth 80 meters, 100, 130. The hull groaned as pressure mounted. Then silence. The sea above boiled with explosions. Depth charges fell like thunder from the heavens. The boat rocked violently. Instruments shattered. Men were thrown from their bunks. Steam hissed from ruptured pipes. And yet, the sonar pings continued, steady, methodical, too precise for chaos. Bauer clutched his headphones. "It's not destroyers," he screamed. "The pattern's wrong." An explosion drowned his voice. Lights went black. For 60 eternal seconds, U-552 tumbled through darkness. When the backup batteries kicked in, a green emergency lamp flickered on. Water poured through a cracked seam. Top barked for damage control. Men scrambled with hammers and plugs. The depth gauge trembled at 220 meters, far deeper than safe limit. Still the echo came. Ping, ping, ping. Slower now. Almost deliberate, as if the ocean itself were breathing. For the rest of the night, U-552 hid motionless on the seabed, engines silent. Men whispered prayers. Bauer traced the rhythm on his notebook, his pencil shaking. It wasn't just a signal. It was identical to their own sonar signature, reflected perfectly, as if some invisible mirror lurked in the abyss. When dawn came, Top gave the order to surface. The boat rose, dripping oil and seawater. The Atlantic was empty once more. At 0900, they received a message from command. U-441 presumed lost. No survivors. Location classified. Top folded the message slowly. "We're next," someone muttered. No one contradicted him. The crew worked in silence as Bauer watched the sonar screen. Then faintly, impossibly, a final echo came through the static. 4 pings spaced evenly apart. The exact distress code for a German submarine. But no such transmission was ever recorded by command. Somewhere below, something had called back. March 14, 1943, Mid-Atlantic, grid AE-91. The sea was glass, the sky an iron lid, and U-552 drifted like a coffin between them. The men had grown gaunt, eyes sunk deep from exhaustion and fear. The air stank of oil and stale breath. They spoke little now. Even laughter sounded wrong, brittle, swallowed by the metal walls. But below the fatigue ran a current of obsession. Bauer could not stop listening. Hour after hour, he bent over his console, his headphones hissing with the low hum of the deep. The others called him Der Gespenstjäger, the ghost hunter. At 437, he heard it again. 1 ping, faint, distant, but unmistakable. He scribbled the interval, the amplitude, the decibel fall-off, identical to the signal from the night of the attack. "It's the same," he told Top, "exactly the same. Frequency 12.1 kilohertz, German-made." The captain leaned over him. "You're saying there's another U-boat transmitting?" Bauer nodded. "Or the same one. But U-441 is gone." The captain's eyes flicked to the chart. "We go investigate," he said quietly. "If it's one of ours, they'll need help." They altered course west by southwest. By evening, the signal grew stronger. The sea rolled under them like molten lead. The wind dropped to nothing. They dived to periscope depth, 20 meters. The horizon was empty. Only fog, only silence. Then through the hydrophones, another sound bled in, a metallic scraping like steel dragging over stone far below. Bauer's knuckles whitened on the dial. "Depth, 200 meters, he whispered. "Bearing 089. The sound pulsed once more, then stopped. The sonar screen went dead. "Could be wreckage," Top murmured. "A lost ship sliding on the shelf." But Bauer shook his head. "It's moving," Top ordered descent. The ballast tanks hissed. 552 slid deeper, the hull moaning with pressure. 90 meters, 150, 200. The light vanished. Darkness absolute. The temperature fell. Condensation dripped from valves like sweat. Then out of the abyss came a new return. Bright, steady, precise, not echo, not reflection, transmission. Signal strength rising, Bauer breathed. "It's active sonar, pointed at us." The captain whispered. "Surface immediately." They tried. The boat groaned but did not rise. The ballast pump screamed. The indicator barely moved. "We're stuck," yelled the engineer. She's being held down. The depth gauge quivered at 240 meters. Then thud, a dull, resonant impact on the hull. Men froze. Another thud, nearer the bow. Something outside was touching them. Mine cable? Someone muttered. But mines did not move in rhythm. The metal clanged again, 3 times, then silence. And then, through the sonar came a new pattern. Long ping. Short, long, short, Morse code. Bauer stared, translating aloud. Oh, bipe, Feisite 2 their own hull number. The men stared at one another in disbelief. No one spoke. Somewhere below something was signaling their name. The lights flickered. The engine stuttered, then coughed back to life. Suddenly the ballast released with a roar and the boat surged upward. Top grabbed the periscope, rising fast. They broke the surface in a geyser of foam. Rain lashed down, wind screaming. Nothing but storm and sea. They circled twice. No contact, no wreck, no survivors. Only the echo fading back into the abyss. When dawn came, Top made his report in code. Contact with unknown submerged signal. Friendly identification uncertain. Continuing patrol. Hours later, a reply crackled through. But it wasn't from Lorient. It was from a relay at sea, a coded message using an obsolete cipher last employed by U-441. Bauer decrypted it slowly, the letters appearing one by one. The message read, "Do not hunt. You are being followed." The radio fell silent. The men stared at the strip of paper like it might burn through their hands. The next wave of static sounded almost like laughter. For 2 days they ran submerged, avoiding contact with anything that moved. No more pings. No more signals. But the fear clung. Men began hearing sounds, scrapes, footsteps on deck, whispers from the vents. One machinist swore he saw a handprint appear in the condensation on the engine bulkhead. Another claimed he heard voices through the hydrophones singing in distorted German. Even the captain began to dream of metal corridors flooded with light. When they surfaced on March 16th to receive orders, the Atlantic greeted them with calm so complete it seemed rehearsed. The sky was blank, the sea silver and smooth. Bauer stepped onto the bridge, headphones still clamped to his ears. He turned toward the horizon, scanning, listening. Then he froze. A faint ping rolled through his headset. Once, twice, then a slow echo from the east. He turned to Top. "Sir, it's not gone." "What bearing?" 015. But he swallowed. "Sir, it's behind us now." Top spun to the aft rail. For a heartbeat, lightning revealed a shape on the horizon. A dark, conning tower cresting the waves, no lights, no signal lamp. Then it vanished beneath the swell. The crew held their breath, waiting for another glimpse. None came. Only silence and the faint aftertaste of fear. That night, Bauer burned his notebook. He said nothing more about the pattern, the code, or the signal that bore their name. But he left one page unburned. On it, drawn in pencil, was a map of the North Atlantic grid. At the center, he had marked a single point circled twice. Beneath it, he had written one word, Echo. March 17, 1943. Latitude 56 degrees north, longitude 25 degrees west. The dawn came slow and pale, a smear of colorless light filtering through endless fog. Firu lay surfaced to ventilate her decks, the sea stretching in every direction like a field of glass. No wind, no horizon, only stillness. The crew moved like sleepwalkers, eyes hollow from nights of listening to things that should not exist. Somewhere far below, the Atlantic whispered in its own strange rhythm, as if it remembered what men had forgotten. Kapitän Lieutenant Erich Top stood alone on the conning tower, his oilskin coat rippling faintly in the damp air. He was a man made of edges, precise, disciplined, unyielding, but now even he looked worn down, his gaze searching the fog for something he couldn't name. He had commanded this boat since '41, had sunk tankers under Arctic storms and escaped destroyer packs by inches, yet nothing in the sea had ever unnerved him like silence did now. Below deck, Hans Bauer still wore his headphones. He hadn't taken them off in nearly 20 hours. He'd started calling the signal the mirror, a sound that didn't just reflect but anticipated. It seemed to know when the boat would dive, when it would surface, when men would speak. It mimicked them like an echo that could think. Top had ordered him to rest. He hadn't obeyed. "It's talking to us," Bauer whispered to the helmsman, who only crossed himself and turned away. At 0640 hours, a lookout shouted from the tower, "Smoke, bearing 042. Through binoculars, Top saw it, thin black trails rising in the distance. He snapped orders. Dive to periscope depth. Ready tubes 1 through 4. The hunt, for a brief moment, returned them to something familiar. The boat slid beneath the waves, gauges humming, men snapping back into rhythm. Through the periscope lens, the sea was blurred with mist. Slowly out of the fog, a shape emerged, a single freighter heavy with cargo plowing eastward. A perfect target. Top smiled thinly. Fire 1 and 2, he said. The torpedoes hissed away, leaving trails of silver bubbles. The men held their breath. Seconds stretched. No explosion. Nothing. Then Bauer shouted, "Contact, bearing 042, multiple returns." Top turned the scope. And froze. The ship was gone. In its place, the water shimmered with a faint phosphorescence, a kind of ghostly glow spreading across the surface. The sonar began to scream. Ping after ping, overlapping, chaotic, each one shaped like their own transmission but faster, distorted. "Shut it down," Top ordered, but the sound didn't stop. The lights flickered. The hull vibrated as if something vast were circling them just beyond sight. The boat lurched. "We've been hit," the navigator shouted. But the depth gauge was steady. No shockwave. No explosion. Just impact, soft, dragging like a hand across steel. Men rushed to the bow compartment. The metal was warm to the touch, almost alive. Bauer knelt, pressed his ear to the hull and whispered, "It's outside." For a full minute, the crew stood motionless, listening. The sound that came through the steel was like breathing, slow, heavy, inhumanly deep. Then, as suddenly as it had come, it was gone. The sonar went silent. The phosphorescence faded. The ocean turned blank once more. They surfaced again at 0900. The sky had cleared to a pale gray. Top scanned the horizon, empty. "It must have been a reflection," he muttered. But the words sounded hollow even to him. That evening, when the watch changed, Bauer found something caught in the forward torpedo net, a fragment of metal, dull and twisted. He pulled it free. It was the remains of a hull plate blackened and bent, the serial number barely legible. But what chilled him wasn't the corrosion, it was the marking. U441. He showed it to the captain. No one spoke. No one needed to. They both knew U441 had gone down days ago, nearly 300 miles from this position. That night, the sea began to glow again, at first faintly, then brighter, until the entire surface shimmered like liquid glass. Men crowded to the periscope, breathless. Through the lens, faint outlines formed in the water, shapes that looked like ships half seen drifting just beneath the surface. One had a conning tower, another shattered masts, all of them silent, all moving with impossible precision in formation. "Ghost convoy," one man whispered. "The ones we've sunk." Top stared through the scope until his eyes watered. He could see the markings on the nearest hull, German letters, faint but unmistakable. U441. It was sailing beside them. The image flickered, distorted, then dissolved into mist. The crew began to unravel. One man tried to open the forward hatch mid-dive, convinced he heard voices calling from outside. Another woke screaming that the ocean was inside his lungs. The doctor dosed them with morphine, but it did nothing. The sea had entered their minds. At 2200 hours, Bauer woke from a nightmare dripping with sweat. The sonar was pinging again, soft, rhythmic. He reached for the switch to cut power, but then he froze. The pattern had changed. It wasn't repeating anymore. It was spelling words in Morse. Slowly, carefully, he decoded it. "Surface, you are not alone." He ran to the bridge, shouting for the captain. Top climbed the ladder, still half asleep. The wind had died. The ocean lay flat as glass. He raised the binoculars and stopped breathing. Out on the horizon, a single U-boat silhouette drifted across the calm engine's dead, conning tower scarred by fire. Its number plate was visible through the mist, U552. For a heartbeat, they stared at their own ghost. The reflection of their boat moved in perfect synchrony, every gesture mirrored. Top turned to Bauer, pale as paper. "Turn off the sonar," he whispered. All of it. They cut the power. The glow faded. The image sank slowly into the sea. When it vanished, the air inside the boat felt heavier than ever before. Bauer slumped at his console. "It's not hunting us," he said. "It's showing us what we'll become." Top said nothing. Outside, the Atlantic was once again silent. March 18th, 1943. The morning came without color, just endless gray. the kind that dissolved sea and sky into one featureless horizon. U-552 drifted beneath it, engines low, her hull coated in salt and fear. Inside, the air was thick and unmoving. Men moved quietly, as if afraid to wake something sleeping in the steel. The memory of the phantom still clung to every bolt and pipe. The reflection of their own boat, their own number plate, mirrored in the fog. Bauer no longer spoke. He sat by the sonar, staring at the blank screen, headphones resting useless around his neck. His hands trembled constantly, even at rest. Captain Lieutenant Erich Topp paced the control room like a ghost in his own ship. Orders from command had been clear. Continue to patrol. Report any Allied movement along grid AE-88. But the men were finished. Discipline held only because there was nothing else to hold on to. One more day, Topp whispered to himself. Then we turned for home. At 0700, Bauer lifted his head. A sound, faint but distinct, flickered through the static. Ping, 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 slower this time, deliberate and impossibly familiar. He didn't reach for the dial. He just listened. It's back, he murmured. But it's not calling us this time. The pattern was different. It was searching. Topp ordered the engine stopped. The sub fell still. In the silence, the sonar came alive again. Now two signals intertwined like two voices whispering through the deep. The first was sharp, mechanical. The second, softer, almost human in its rhythm. The men listened as it pulsed through the steel, echoing in their bones. Bauer began writing the sequence in his notebook. The code translated slowly, surface witness. Topp hesitated only a second before ordering ballast blow. The boat rose, climbing toward the surface light that bled faintly through the murk. The hull broke the water with a long hiss. Rain hammered the deck. The sea glowed faintly, green, silver, ghost-like. And then they saw it. On the horizon, half shrouded in fog, another submarine drifted. Motionless, half-submerged, conning tower listing. Through binoculars, Topp could read its number, U-441. The crew fell silent. Impossible, someone whispered. She's gone. But there it was, hull scorched, deck gun shattered, still afloat. Prepare boarding party, Topp said. His voice was calm, almost detached. A dinghy was lowered. 4 men rowed across the still water. Topp, Bauer, the engineer, and a petty officer. The sea was unnaturally smooth, reflecting the fog like a mirror. Each stroke echoed like thunder. As they neared, the stench hit first. Oil, rust, and something older like decay wrapped in salt. The hull of U-441 was slick with algae and soot. Her conning tower door hung open. No sound came from within. They climbed aboard. The deck was cold under their boots. The air tasted metallic, dead. Topp raised his flashlight and stepped through the hatch. Inside, the corridor stretched in eerie stillness. Tools floated in midair, weightless in the stagnant water that pooled waist-deep. A chair drifted by. Every gauge and dial was dark. Then Bauer froze. His beam had caught something on the wall. A handprint smeared in oil, perfectly fresh. Someone's alive, the engineer whispered. But there was no movement. They moved deeper into the control room. The radio set sat upright, light blinking faintly. Its dial glowed red. Bauer knelt beside it. The frequency was German naval band. And it was transmitting, continuously, a message repeating in slow, deliberate code. Bauer translated aloud, echo complete. Transmission ends. As he finished, the radio clicked off. The light died. In the darkness, something groaned. Metal shifting under unseen weight. The air grew colder. From the aft corridor came a soft sound, rhythmic and wet like dripping. Topp turned his light. For a heartbeat, he saw them. Silhouettes, 4 men standing knee-deep in water, faces indistinct, uniforms rotted and blackened. One raised a hand in salute. Then the light flickered and the figures were gone. Bauer stumbled back, gasping. "We have to go," he said. But Topp didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the periscope well. Inside the lens glass, something glimmered. Their own reflection, but the faces were wrong. Older, hollow-eyed, dead. He tore himself away. "Back to the boat," he ordered. They climbed out, rowing hard through the mist. Behind them, U-441 was sinking. Bow first, vanishing silently beneath the surface as though the sea had been waiting for them to leave. When the last ripple faded, the sonar aboard U-552 came alive again. Bauer heard it before they reached the hatch. Ping, pause, ping. Then one final sequence, 4 pings spaced evenly apart. The same pattern that had marked U-441's last known transmission. By nightfall, the signal was gone for good. The crew sat in silence, staring at nothing, waiting for the next sound that never came. Top wrote one final entry in the logbook. U-441 sighted and lost. No survivors. Possible transmission artifact. Continuing patrol. He closed it, set down the pen, and looked around at his men. "We go home," he said softly. The boat turned east. The sea swallowed her wake. For days they traveled through calm water. No more signals, no more echoes. Just silence. When they finally reached Lorient, the base command refused to believe the report. U-441 sank with all hands on March 12th, the officer said flatly. "You must have seen debris." Top said nothing. Bauer was sent to medical evaluation and never returned to sea. His belongings were boxed and stored. Years later, when those boxes were opened, inside was a single sealed envelope addressed to the next sonar operator. Inside, one page, a hand-drawn sonar chart. At its center, 4 pings evenly spaced. Beneath them, 2 words in pencil. "Still listening."